Any stress eating going on? Yeah, a little bit, one up there, just one. This is a picture this week of, does anybody remember what it was last week? It's still the same vegetable. Anyone? It's a leek. It's about to bloom. Isn't that beautiful? Maybe next week I will bring you the bloom leek. We are so delighted tonight to have our special guest, Corby Kummer. It's come all the way from Boston to be with us tonight, and special guest Mark Ryle. Tonight is really your class, students, because this is the topic, really food access and security, that you've really been most interested in. You remember at the beginning of the semester, I invited you to help co-create the class, and throughout the semester, universally, the most frequent feedback and of interest has been just this area of how do we get healthy food to the people who need it most. So tonight is our opportunity to really explore that with two people who are involved with very innovative organizations from both coasts that will delve into this in a moment. Just a couple of announcements. Next week's class is our final class. We're really lucky to have Michael Pollan, really the originator of this course, here with us as our special guest. We're also going to have Liz Carlisle, who is the author of Lentil Underground, and I've sent you the opening prologue from her book. I hope you'll enjoy it. It's really fun to read. Next week is really about how we take our edible education into the real world. So we're also going to feature some short stories and presentations by recent Berkeley alums to tell you about how they kind of migrated from the classroom into the food movement. So it should be a lot of fun. It should be practical. It's open to the public, as you know, and the last class tends to draw a lot of people. So if you have friends or family wanting to come to the class, be sure that they have an Eventbrite ticket next week, which is going to be available online in our weekly email. Also, you're aware that the final assignment's been posted. If you have any questions about this assignment or need help, please contact the teaching team next week. You have till the 20th to turn it in, which is a week from Friday. But we'd really like to field any questions early in the week. And then finally, Alyssa, you'll be ready next week to proctor the final evaluations too, I hope, okay? So we'll leave a little bit of time, obviously, to do that. That feedback's really important to us. And two things that I will ask of you, and I'll ask again next week. One is, please turn in the evaluation. It's really helpful to us. And then also, we'd really appreciate your help. If this course is offered again next fall, which I'm hopeful it will be, we'd really love your help in enlisting students from across campus to participate. One of the things that makes this class special is that it really does attract a cross-disciplinary group of students. Okay, I'm going to give Rohini a minute to come up for this week's policy update. Are you ready, Rohini? Come on up. Rohini, as you know, is our graduate student instructor. She's a graduate student in the School of Public Policy. Go over there to that microphone. I just really appreciate her kind of covering the landscape of public policy and keeping us apprised of what's happening. Your turn.
Okay, hi everyone. Hope you're doing well. Two big things happened this week. The first one is probably going to be the largest piece in food policy for probably the next decade or so. What just happened is that the Department of Justice gave the green light for the merger between Bayer and Monsanto to become one company. So it hasn't been formal yet, but they got to go ahead.
What does that mean?
It means that they're going to become the largest food agribusiness company in the world. And then the second piece is really quite interesting. In Missouri, some legislation passed two House committees to label lab-grown meat differently. And why I found this one particularly interesting is that lab-grown meat isn't even on the market yet, but there's just a lot of policy action happening to already regulate it. So that's interesting.
Thanks. Thanks, Rohini. Appreciate that. As you know, one of the themes of the class is really to help develop your food systems intelligence and develop this kind of X-ray vision around transparency. So it's going to be interesting. One of the topics we've talked about is this concentration of power in the food industry, and this merger between Monsanto and Bayer is very significant from that perspective. And to Rohini's other point, this lobbying, the undercurrent of this legislation is obviously the industrial agriculture community concerned that the lab-grown meat is even being called meat. So we're going to be getting into a very interesting time around standards of identity of what is actually food. And I think being here in the Bay Area, we get kind of the first whiff of all of the energy around disrupting the current supply chain. I think one of the things I'm hoping you'll do as you go forward is to think about really calling for transparency, being skeptical, and asking tough questions, and really waiting for people to answer. That really leads me kind of leading up to being able to introduce our guests tonight. Last week, you'll remember we had Kristen Richmond, from the CEO and co-founder of Revolution Foods, and she really introduced a concept of systems entrepreneurship or systems innovation, where she connected not only product innovations, this kind of healthy, fresh food, but also innovations in the supply chain, innovations in terms of the community. She talked a lot about how she's working with mayors and community leaders. She talked about creating evidence base through studies that were showing the efficacy of their meals, that kids were actually getting higher grades, they were having less behavioral problems, and working also through the Farm Bill to get more allocation to the school lunch program. So I'm particularly fascinated, and I hope you'll also kind of keep thinking about how we can participate in the food system on multiple interconnected fronts at the same time. So one of the tools that we're using in the class is this notion of reflecting on what we learn, connecting the disparate pieces, and then integrating them. And I am really happy tonight to introduce to you a gentleman that does that with great, just great style and great curiosity. Corby Kummer is the senior editor at The Atlantic magazine. He's a member of the Aspen Institute, where he leads a lot of their food-related work. And I always turn to Corby's writing when I'm looking for sort of a skeptical eye, because when I look at something new and scratch my head, he's also doing that too, and he's writing about it. He's written some of the articles you read last week about Blue Apron. It's interesting. So Blue Apron was this skyrocket of a company. It got all of this attention. They were reporting sales of close to $1 billion, and then it went public and has effectively fallen flat. The CEO founder has left. They're really scrambling to find their way. And I remember it was about a year ago that you wrote that piece, and you called me up and you said, what's going on with these guys with the food in the box? And wrote a wonderful piece, just, following his curiosity. He's won many James Beard Awards. He's an educator, a writer, and he's also a really valued community leader. So without further ado, please welcome Corby Kummer.
Thank you. Thank you. This is the magical handoff. I've never worked one of these clickers before, and I never use PowerPoint, so you'll all be delighted at my technical expertise as we try to start this. So I'm going to be talking a lot about community servings, and then Will can tell me when I have a chance to answer some very, very thoughtful questions that I'm going to crib for future columns.
Do that here.
Because they're so good when we're there. Okay, great. So this will be standing at the podium, and I'll time myself, and I'll give you guys extra time. So why am I talking about community servings? Because I think anyone who gets really interested in food starts thinking about, or when I say anyone I would like to talk to and engage with. gets interested in who grew it, who else is going to eat it, who cooked it, where did it come from, how did it get here, how did I get to be eating it? And then how can we all come together and eat it? I started writing very glossy pieces about food, but from the very beginning I had this focus on farmers and who was making it. But within the Boston restaurant community, where there was explosive growth. So you've heard from Alice Waters, it's a name that's going to come up. If I see this in a room when I come in, it's as if it's the most primitive part of my brain says, Alice has been here. Because this is an Alice accoutrement, so I just know the mark of Alice is here. So I'll also be talking about her. She had started a new kind of consciousness about who made food, where did it come from. And like everyone who has read about her from afar, she seemed irritating and smug. So I came here expecting to be irritated and put off by her Californian earnestness and goodness. And like most people who are right next to her, I fell in love with her. And it happened when we went to the farm that Chez Panisse still has sort of locked in and locked up, Canard Farms. She fell to her knees and said, oh, fraises des bois, meaning little wood strawberries that were incredibly delicious. But this sort of primitive pleasure she took, and the whole idea that I, who was coming assigned by a glossy magazine to write about the restaurant, she wouldn't let me into the restaurant before I went to the farm. So that was her priorities. Lots of cooks in Boston, where I lived and worked, were starting to think, how do I engage with farmers and how do I engage with the public? But we were also thinking, how do we engage with the world? As Alice was interested in the free speech movement and Mario Savio that was happening right here on the steps of Berkeley, the AIDS crisis was starting and taking hold in Boston in the mid-1980s. Mysterious, threatening, a killer, horrible, and the food community didn't know what to do about it, but knew that a lot of its own and its members were being affected. And so a group of people came together and said, we're going to have a fundraiser and we're going to get the biggest banks and insurance companies and money bags in Boston to put their name to it, which none of them had done. They had not come near AIDS or HIV. It was called Aid and Comfort, and it brought together people with a common purpose who were the most disparate people. And that's, I think, what you're looking to do in your own assignments that Will was telling me about. You either create community or you find community. But this effort, this one dinner that was probably 1989 called Aid and Comfort, created a community that has lasted to this day. It was forged in urgency, crisis, and despair, and it also had this kind of scrappiness to it. And here's how we were scrappy. We killed ourselves for a year. Weekly meetings, they were like rallies. You know, the Bank of Boston would come on there. John Hancock would come on. These places that would never touch this kind of subject came on, and we made, gosh, I can't remember what we donated, but it was a couple of $100,000, which was vast. And we did it to the fledgling AIDS service organization called AIDS Action of Boston. They wouldn't tell us how they spent the money we'd killed ourselves raising. And we went to their offices and we saw new carpeting and a beautiful phone system. And we all said, that's it. We're pulling out of this place and we're starting our own group. And it was community servings. And the idea was, we're going to bring home-delivered meals to people with HIV. And how do you create an organization when none existed? How do you get the money to do it? We operated out of a kitchen in a social service agency in Dorchester. Have any of you heard of Dorchester, Boston. Have any of you heard of Priscilla Chan Zuckerberg? If you read about her experiences growing up in Dorchester, working at the very place that rented us for no money a tiny kitchen, Dorchester House, she gave an interview to the East Bay newspaper because, as you might know, she's completely funded a school. When she talked about engaging with students in Dorchester and what that was like for her and meant for her growing up, and her being able to participate with the community and make a difference, it changed her life, and it changed what she does now and the whole Chan Zuckerberg initiative. So Dorchester, very poor, mixed Irish and Black community, and also Latino. They gave us a kitchen, and we fed about 30 people a day. So we have come a long way. And there are many ways we've had to innovate. We've innovated not just because we sit around at coffee shops being brilliant and sparking ideas. It's to keep alive and to get funding streams as an organization. And if any of you go into social service or nonprofits, as I earnestly hope you will, or make it part of your lives, you'll understand that figuring out how to fund it is what really counts. So, medically tailored meals. What you're going to see here is a tremendous amount of focus on the word medically and food as medicine. And I believe that Mark, who's doing very innovative things himself, will also be talking about similar uses and similar goals. And you'll hear why when you see the point of this deck that my colleagues at Community Servings, my involvement, by the way, is I was a founding board member, and I am the longest serving, and I hope not, I'm not the oldest board member, but I'm the longest serving board member. So founded in 1990, it was in Roxbury, famously poor neighborhood, and Dorchester. So 2,000 clients living in 20 cities. When we say 2,000 clients, every day we're preparing meals for 1,300 people in these 20 communities. But in the course of a year, because people cycle in and out, it used to be because they all died, it's still often because they've died. The criterion is you have to have, you're held to very strict income thresholds. You can't afford to feed your family, you don't have time, and you're faced with a critical illness. You'll be hearing that, that it's only a portion of our clients who have HIV. 20 towns, we've had a lot of regional growth because there were a lot of places. You'll also find that in the cycle of nonprofits, places go in and out, they lose their funding and they die and they consolidate. We picked up a lot of clients from AIDS service organizations and Meals on Wheels programs that couldn't fund themselves, and we were able to pick them up and serve them. But from the beginning, there were a couple of things we did. Some are mentioned here and some are not, because this is mostly about medically tailored meals. We thought carefully about who has diabetes, who has kidney problems, are our patients on chemotherapy? Because HIV has so many co-diagnoses, comorbidities as it's called. There were lots of different nutritional requirements we had to think about. That became a big selling point and point of differentiation between us and other meals programs. And now we've made it really our calling card that we have so many diets. Up to 3 diets from the above. I think we're going to come to how many there are. It's about 30 different diets. So cardiac, renal, and diabetic are now big focuses for us, especially diabetic. Why? Because as the drug cocktails took hold for HIV, an enormous number of people, just like the rest of the population, were able to stay alive and get diabetes. And so a very large proportion of our clients have both HIV and diabetes. One of the toughest women and people in the world I know was one of the very first HIV doctors. And she said, I'm so tired of my practice because I'm just treating diabetic patients the way everybody else does, because the drugs have been so successful. We also very much changed our model. We were romantically bringing hot meals to people every day. So like sterno in the back of a van. That's not easy for food safety. We had all these strict regulations. How is it hot enough? It's not great for palatability. About 10 or even longer years into this, we realized it's much safer and better if we deliver them frozen meals and tell them how to heat them up in the microwave. So that's what we do. And at the beginning, again, because when you become involved in an organization, you want to come up with your own ideas and say, how do I do this? So we came up with, how are we going to get used microwaves so we could give all of our clients microwaves? So we would go to colleges and universities. We would go to various organizations and businesses that were getting rid of their microwaves, and we would, refurbish them and give them. Now it's a tiny fraction of our clients who don't have microwaves. Almost everyone has microwaves. And I assure you, we give them new. They are not used. There's nothing used that's given. So we bring meals once a week, and they're frozen. And you've just seen what a lot of them include. So here are our multiple comorbidities, multiple diagnoses. And we went to many other communities, mostly because they had lost their meal service programs. They couldn't fund themselves, they were gone. And we stepped in and met the need. And also, we wanted to innovate because we didn't want to go out of business and be a niche business. We wanted to go to the poorest communities in Massachusetts, which we started off in Lowell. Have any of you heard of Lowell, which was an enormously important mill town in New England, a driver of the entire economy? And Lowell and New Bedford, at the time Melville was writing Moby Dick, were two of the richest towns, not just in America, but the world. Then Lowell had industry, but it all died mostly because of unions in the 50s and 60s. So they're now a very poor community. So the funding, the core is still Ryan White. How many of you have heard of the Ryan White Act? Wow. So Ryan White was what unlocked the door to both medical but especially non-medical interventions for patients with AIDS and HIV, because a child named Ryan White had contracted HIV through a blood infusion. And I think it was Ronald Reagan, the president, who was unable to use the word AIDS while his friends were dying all around him. He was able to sympathize and rally Republicans around a cause of a small child and the injustice dying. And Congress passed the Ryan White Care Act, which has been a reliable entitlement program. I think that Mark will be much more expert on this than I. But we live in constant fear that it's going to just end. So we are always having to prepare for the future when we will no longer have any federal money at that core. So we've done a lot with philanthropy and raising money. And raising money, as you'll also find, and Mark is, I'm sure, much more expert than I, we've never had the name visibility, even though I told you about that huge success of getting companies who had never lent their name to this at the beginning. We never became a darling of the rich people who gave money to the museums and the symphony. It's always been a struggle to get visibility and to get rich people to want to give us money. So we've gone to various family foundations, but it's always been really hard, and we've had an enormously ingenious leader named David Waters, whom I'll be talking about, and really has taken us in a lot of innovative directions. And then there's this unmet need. We are very aware of our wait list. So 3 to 6 months really means 3 to 6 months. We have between 100 and 150 often on our wait list. We hate having a wait list. We don't want wait lists. I haven't also said that one of the founding principles was, if we accept a patient and the patient meets the criteria, we feed the entire family. Because what we were discovering and what we knew is, if you give a meal to the ill person, and the ill person is a mother with 3 children, she gives that food to her children. She doesn't eat it. So when we took on a client, we took on the client's household or anyone who was dependent on that client. And so the waiting list is something quite serious for us because it's not just one meal. Often it's one meal, but it can be 4 meals, 5 meals. Okay, so now we have malnutrition and we're getting to the new focus of why we're caring so much about medically tailored meals. Here is establishing medical need for using food as medicine. Can any of you guess why it's so important for us to establish medical need? What's a funding stream I have not mentioned? Medicare, yes! Medicare and especially Medicaid and health insurance. That is what we have long wanted to be reimbursed for. But in order to get any kind of Medicaid money, which is what we're really looking for, you have to prove return on investment and you have to prove that your meals will lower costs. That's what we're actively engaged in doing. So we've had our first white paper to show that we not only improve health, but that we, let me skip ahead, that we reduce hospital admissions and emergency department visits. Those are hugely expensive little nuclei of clients' engagement with the healthcare system. And if you can actually show that when you had better than just a meal, but a medically tailored meal to the specific illness of the person, then you are building a case for insurance companies and accountable care organizations, as they're called in Massachusetts. I think they're called that in the Affordable Care Act too. But managed care organizations and accountable care, they work on models by which they get a lump sum and they are able to distribute it the way they want. The idea being they can reduce costs and spend the money in innovative ways to help more people. We're trying to convince them that if they will use our medically tailored meals, we will be able to lower their costs and have them help more people. Now, I don't know if they've given me a slide that shows the percent of illness, but we now have a patient population that's about 40% with HIV. Why have we gone so far outside of this realm? It's because there's need, but it's also because when you're building a business, when you're building a model for a successful nonprofit, you have to look at what your funders want, will fund, and where the revenue streams are. And they started drying up for HIV when life became longer because of the drug cocktail and because of easily affordable drug treatments. It was a miracle, it's still a miracle, but it meant that we were imperiled. In fact, we thought that because funding went down so much that we were going to have to end, as many of our sister organizations did. Many of them did. There used to be an association, Mark, how many were there? 9, 12?
7, 3 organizations.
And now there's 3? Yeah, so it's really, it's the places that have innovated. So we went very aggressively after women with breast cancer, kidney disease, and we now have 200 referral organizations that give us all kinds of patients. And these are some of the partners and projects that are looking to see, can we actually reduce healthcare costs? And can we show it? You know, it's always, whenever I see a picture of a client, we get like one client every 2 years. We're so careful about ever asking a client, will she or he want to be shown in our materials? And at the beginning, we had only unmarked vans in neighborhoods because of the stigma. Because if anybody knew what community servings did, which is a deliberately bland name, but it also had people who came together about trying to strengthen communities with food, but still, it's a bland name. And it's been also so that you don't have any association with they're ill people. Because when we first began, if neighbors knew, they could shun them, they could expel them, they could lose their jobs. I mean, real issues were at stake. So in any case, I'm glad to see one of our clients, and now we've got videos. So we've had some actually comparisons against regular food that you would get from many kinds of meals programs. And here's the slide. So I called up David Waters and I said, I'm showing students this slide. Where are the actual numbers of emergency visits? Where are the numbers of inpatient admissions? How can you actually show that our meals really lowered cost? Do you have numbers to this, or are you just saying they happen to say it in a survey and so we think we can claim it? And he was extremely offended. He said, how much information do you think you can get onto a slide in a PowerPoint? Yes, these are real studies. Yes, there's lots of underlying data. And yes, we are starting to show actual costs. This is what gets the attention of an insurer and Medicaid. This is what we need to show. And we need to show it on a more robust, larger scale, because that's what's going to keep us feeding people for a longer time. I don't think it's in this deck because it's mostly about what we intend to do to increase our food as medicine strategy. But we've recently, I don't know how much of this is public, but we've had a very successful capital campaign. Capital campaigns are the scariest things a nonprofit can do. It's like taking a leap over a cliff. You say you're going to build a building, you say you're going to increase services. So when I said 1,300 hospital beds or places per day with our meals, we are going to have the capacity for 4,000 in a year and a half, 2 years. Now, we don't expect to get to 4,000 until we can really demonstrate all these savings and get some of that insurance money in a more reliable stream. But we are hoping within 10 years, our goal is 4,000 in any one day. So we have big ambitions. So we're hoping that we're going to partner with many other schools and organizations to try to prove that food can actually, food has not ever been covered by insurance to do with actually trying to help people with diabetes. You've all heard of bounty bucks and double value food coupons, I hope, and farmers market coupons to double the value of food. But it hasn't been part of kind of the regular medical establishment's plan. That's what we're trying to do because that's what we see as the long-term future. But what this began as was seeing that we all cared about feeding people in different ways. We all wanted to make our community a better place. We saw this urgent, unhappy need, and so we came together for it. And what I hope you're all thinking about now is, what do I see in my own community? And I hope you all read. I get to read, I have 40 browser tabs open at one time, and I don't read them all. I say I read them all, but I try to keep up. I'm sure you're all much more aware than I. But I hope that many of you saw a piece by Caitlin Dewey in the Washington Post about a new study from Temple University about hunger on campus. Does this ring any bells? Mm-hmm. I'm going to ask Will, who has seen it, to pass around the link. Caitlin Dewey came here as part of the 11th Hour Food and Environment Reporting Fellowship. She's doing another project for that fellowship, which I had the great good fortune to edit and advise on this year. But she did a knockout piece summarizing this study about hunger all around us on college campuses. And the hundreds of food pantries that are opening behind the fancy dining halls that have all of the gluten-free and allergy-free options. Because so many students are able, through places like the Aspen Institute, which has devoted an enormous amount of its time to increasing accessibility for college education among previously underserved populations, among high school students who never thought they'd ever engage with higher education. There's been a lot of success in funding it, but what hasn't gone along with it is, where do these students eat? And do they have enough money to eat? So when Will was telling me that you're all very concerned about food insecurity, it's happening right now. It's happening on campus, and it's happening all around you, a lot at state schools. So that would be one way to start thinking of how you can engage. Did you have Saru Jeremiah, how do I pronounce it? She came, did you all decide you were going to go do something about helping restaurant workers and back of the house workers? I hope you did. And if, it depends on the speaker who comes. You could all, if somebody from Coalition of Immokalee Farm Workers came and talked to you, you'd be on the next plane to a rural agriculture area, or you don't have to be on a plane, you can get in a car here, and you'd be trying to help the workers. It depends on where is the community you want to live in and how you want to engage. And the community that's built this is a very fancy looking PowerPoint, and I'm very proud of it. But we began incredibly rustically in a tiny kitchen in a very poor part of Boston, with us coming in and cooking. And I was asking David Waters, who has pushed us in really interesting directions, like, for example, when I keep talking about medical tailoring as a way of getting money, it's also been a way of training food service workers. So about 15 years ago, I wound up being one of the main people to raise money to start a job training program for returning citizens. You know that is the way to call people who are getting out of prison, because we have much higher standards than most colleges and as high as hospitals. We have an 85% placement rate with our 40 or so graduates a year in our job trainings program. And when you go to the graduation, and you have 50 to 70, and you see the graduates, about 15 per class, who've been there for 6 weeks, every afternoon, helping each other learn how to prep, how to be really concerned about food safety, and their families come, and their parents, and their friends, and the way they cheer each other on. I never thought that was going to be part of what we were coming together at Community Servings. It's like one of the single most moving aspects of anything we do. I used to trail along to delivery, going and delivering meals to people, because don't we still say delivering meals, delivering hope? We've had lots of branding campaigns. So delivering meals, delivering hope. When we were daily food service with our Sterno cans in the back so that we could have hot meals. I'm not going to say of dubious food safety, we were always careful, but Sterno was just a bad idea. But we would go and appear at their door, and often our drivers were the only people that our clients saw an entire day. And it's still the case that it can be the only people who come to the door every week. And so it's very important, this human contact. That's always been a really important part of our model. But we don't allow volunteers to do this, except apparently on Saturday mornings we have 3 routes that allow volunteers to come in. Because at the beginning we all wanted to do it. We all wanted to take the meals ourselves. But you have to be reliable. You have to make sure you're going to show up at the right time when these people expect you to be there. But we do allow people to come along. Nonetheless, we have 50 to 75 volunteers a day in our Jamaica Plain headquarters, which is the equivalent of 30 full-time employees a year, 6,000 hours a year. It's really important. It's a great way for schools, we have a ton of schools, to have community building exercises. Do you know, if any of you had summer jobs at like a tech business that will go have a cooking class one night, those are big, popular team building activities because you get to criticize everybody who's not cooking as well as you do. But with us, it's job training. And it's a way of actually preparing the food. So job training, getting volunteers in, involving various community groups. Some of them will give money, some of them will actively engage. But we have tripled our capacity, and there's just a lot of savings. Now, I'm not going to go into these questions because we're going to have chat. But this is the way I got to engage with food. And I would say if I had been living here, it probably would have been with farmers and with farm workers and the unmet need. I'm now a teacher at Tufts, and I've taught at Boston University and MIT. But since I read that Caitlin Dewey piece in the study about hunger on campus, that's galvanized me. And I'm going to see what I can do within my own university to engage with local organizations, because you're never inventing the wheel. Even when you think you've got the bravest, freshest idea, it's your job to go around and find all the people who are doing the same thing. Find out what are their problems, what are their challenges, but what are they not doing that I'm interested in doing. So I now want to go tour what food pantries there are and what ways there are to allow students to eat and make sure that, something I made one of my students do last semester was, she was working in a restaurant with, she's from Puerto Rico, with various Puerto Rican workers, all of them terrified of an ICE visit in the night and their papers. But we were worried about SNAP eligibility requirements and whether that was changing. And she needed SNAP herself. And I said, you have to go out and write a paper about how careful is the scrutiny when you go. And so I try to provoke students to become engaged themselves. And I made another student go along with her to report and see what it was like, the eligibility. So there's all kinds of ways you yourselves can engage. I hope you will, and I encourage you to, and I look forward to our conversation with your great questions later.
Thank you. Thank you, Corby. If you, we'll have a conversation about some of these topics, and Corby, thanks for planting those seeds. I think it's really interesting to think about how we can use existing community platforms and spread the best practices. I thought it would be really interesting tonight to get a look at one of our own community organizations, Project Open Hand, which has been a very fundamental feeding program, if you will, here in the Bay Area for many years. And in the last few years, it's undergone some really interesting innovation that we've invited the executive director, Mark Ryle, to talk about. So please give a warm welcome to Mark to talk about Project Open Hand. Thank you. The clicker is right there.
All right, got it. Good evening. Can you hear me? All right, I'm going to assume you can. I'm a walker, so I'm going to walk around a little bit. I may get ahead of this clicker. Oh, I'm sure it's my slides. Sorry, hold on a second.
You can just click ahead. There's a dark one, and then yours is
Looky
next.
there.
Yeah.
I'm going to try. My name's Mark Ryle. I'm the CEO of Project Open Hand. We're a nonprofit based in San Francisco in the Tenderloin, and we have been there for 34 years. We are also in Oakland. We've been there for 29 years, almost 30 years, doing the work really with our partner agencies like Community serving folks who are very critically ill, very vulnerable. So what I'm going to try and do in the next 15 minutes or so is talk to you about what we do through the eyes of our clients. And I'm going to show a quick video because everybody likes a movie. And I'm going to tell you a few stories. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some research and some of the return on the investment that Corby talked about that the Boston agency is doing. What David Waters has been doing has been incredible, a leader in the field. So first we'll start with this video.
I am from Barbados, which is in the Caribbean island. Moving here to San Francisco about 10 years ago, I found Project Open Hand.
I've been a client of Open Hand for 20 years. I saw a number of people waiting in line to get their groceries at the time, and I felt a little embarrassed to get my groceries. I had lost something like 25 pounds.
I love to cook, but working in high-end restaurants is energy consuming. And I was just getting to the point where I needed to do something more meaningful for myself. At that point, I also was dealing with some health issues, and my doctor suggested that I volunteer at Project Open Hand first. I came in to volunteer, and I realized they were looking for a young chef to work as a special diet chef, and I got hired immediately. Being a client and a volunteer and a staff member, it was a very meaningful opportunity.
I'm attending to Corby Senior Center meal site since 2007. When I go out, I saw on the street people standing line, and I asked them, for what this lion? And they said, for meal, for seniors. And I came in, and I taste the food. What a lovely, delicious food, and I come every day.
I've worked at Project Open Hand, going on 14 years, May 29th. What I like most is the people you work with. That's important. You gotta like the people you work with. You gotta click with them. You gotta be a team player, because we're a big team here. It's like my second family.
I was grateful that I was able to be a part of Open Hand. I made some good friends. I see people, they come in, and I encourage them it's okay to volunteer. Don't be afraid. And there are people who are volunteers, who are clients, because they're grateful, like I am grateful, for what Open Hand has done for us.
I'm a country woman. I was riding camel, horses, sometimes motorcycle. When I came here, it's like space for me.
When I deliver to the client, it feels great, because you can just see their expression. That, oh, the Jedi is here and my meal is here. I'm good to go. They just light up. My mom was a client with us for about 3 years. We delivered diabetic food 7 days a week. She loved it too.
Trying to work and be a healthy person and concentrate on enriching your life can be daunting and energy draining if you don't have an appetite to eat.
I had to learn English. I had to learn this lifestyle. It was hard for me, and I had a depression. I needed help. Project Open Hand saved me.
Humanity 101, Project Open Hand, because it is.
I love you guys.
Mario dances. So what I hope you get from the start of that video is that what we do is about those clients. What we do isn't about the million meals that we make from scratch every year. I'm going to back up a little bit. The million meals that Chef Adrian, who's in the crowd with us today, makes from scratch. Chef's story is powerful. Exactly the model of what we're supposed to do in this work. Chef was working at a fancy restaurant, French restaurant in San Francisco, high dollar place, living the life. Too sick to work. I get teary. Too sick to work. Became a client of Open Hand, got better, became a volunteer, got better, started working for us, and now leads the work we do. That's what we do, right? We build that. We get people back on their feet through the most basic means necessary, through food, through what your grandmother would make for you. So here's who we are. We make 2,500 meals a day from scratch. It's not repackaged meatballs, it's not mac and cheese. It's food that's made to attend to an individual's diagnoses very specifically. We do this work with love, but we do it with science. We also have a grocery program because sometimes people get better and they want to make their own food. So we have a healthy grocery, so if you want to go home and cook and chop and make something that's creative on your own, you do it that way too, if you're feeling better. What we want to do at Open Hand is we want to carry you through your continuum of care. So that if you start out with us in your most vulnerable place, or you need a hot meal delivered every day because you can't even get up out of bed, we'll do that for you every single day. Haven't ever stopped in 34 years. And as we get you better, we want to get you out into the community. We'll bring you into Open Hand either on Polk Street in the Tenderloin or on Oakland, so you can see other people, so you can be part of community, and you can pick up your meals or your groceries. And as you get even better, we'll take you to community sites around San Francisco. We have 21 sites where we serve a hot lunch every single day. That was where our Ross School is, who sometimes rides a motorcycle. And because we want to carry you through that. We don't expect you to stay in that place. We absolutely expect that our intervention will work and you'll get better. And we're going to create the scenarios where that happens. And I'm going to tell you, so three client stories. The first one is Mark. Mark is a vet. He served, in his own words, he served his country. He was a warrior. He fought for people. He was about justice and goodness. When he got back, life didn't work so well anymore. Couldn't really figure out how to fit in the country that he left for a little while. And that resulted in homelessness for a long time. And we got to him because people in San Francisco and Oakland know who we are. And Mark was ready to re-engage in the ways that he could. And food is a great lure. What we know about food is that people will do just about anything to get food. And so we're able to use that as a tool for engagement. I don't mean to sound crass, but we're able to use that connection to that very basic element to get folks to come in and do other things they need to be doing. Every single one of our clients at Open Hand will engage with their physician within 30 days of coming into contact with us. It's so important when you're sick. And that's what Mark was able to do. So now Mark went back to school, now is an RN, doing great work, has a great little yellow Izod t-shirt on, smiling broadly, and is the story of our success. But he did that after trauma, after homelessness, after the lack of choice, after the lack of justice, after being forgotten by his country, and found a place at Open Hand. Who we serve, so, this is a pop-up. We, like Community Servings, we are an agency that serves clients where nutrition has an impact. So you won't see a diagnosis up here where nutrition doesn't have a pretty quick, immediate impact because we want to stick to that niche. That's what we know how to do. Breast cancer is one of them. We expanded into breast cancer in about 12, 14 years ago because if you know anyone who has gone through that, I have 2 sisters-in-law and 1 sister who've done it. And it will knock you on your ass. And treatment is tough. So we've got to get in there and help you. But I tell you, women are fierce. So they'll get better as fast as they can because they got shit to do. They've got other things to do. And they've got families to take care of. They've got jobs to do. So we'll get them better and then they go. And they teach others how to do the work. Breast cancer is a big part of our population. The second is congestive heart failure, because congestive heart failure is the primary diagnosis for hospital readmissions in the state of California. It is why people will regularly readmit within 30 days, because it's so impacted by the level of sodium in your diet, and most of the things we eat are high sodium. So healthy food makes a difference. Type 2 diabetes, that's not rocket science, caused and made worse by what we eat. HIV, because that's where we're born. We, Open Hand started in 1985 in the crisis of AIDS in San Francisco, where every 3rd person died within 6 months. And the only thing we knew how to do, because back in the day, HIV would eat away at your body. There weren't drugs. So it would take away everything that was healthy, and you would look like you were a prison camp survivor. We were all bones. So what do? You feed them. You make macaroni and cheese and meatloaf and things that put meat on your bones. That's how we started our work. That's what we still do. About 22% of our client base is HIV in total. So a smaller population, thank goodness, because the drugs work and because we have a system that takes care of them. And then finally, end-stage renal disease. More of a stabilizing intervention for us than a curative intervention, but we do a good job of that too. So we have a secret sauce at Open Hand, same secret sauce that Community Servings has in Boston. It isn't just about the food. The medical nutrition is absolutely the fundamental part of this. But remember I said that people will do almost anything for that food. And what we say is you have to see your doctor. You can't have the food unless you're seeing your doctor. because that's how you get better. So that is the second leg of the stool. And the third is you have to see our dietitians. Christy is here and Mariana are here, who are RDs at Open Hand. And these ladies will make sure that you understand how your medicine and how your disease affects what you should be eating, and then how you can figure out how to navigate the world of nutrition in really tough situations where it's not easily available. Teach you. Those three things make the difference in our work. I hate this slide, so I'm going to go right through it. Proof. Corby talked about the research. On April 2nd, how many days ago is that? How many days ago that is, the Boston agency published with 2 other organizations in health affairs their study that Corby put that slide up on, the significant reduction. On the one side, you saw a regular delivered meal program saving about $1. And you saw on the left side of it, you saw the community servings intervention saving $220 in a hospital stay for per day per client. Powerful work. And the reason we do research is because we can't just talk about how many meals we make. We can't just show those beautiful videos that make me cry every single frickin' time. That works for your heart, but we've got to show a return. I spent 22 years in corporate finance. There should be a return on this investment as a taxpayer, as a health system, as any other person involved in this work. Even if you just care about the community, you should want a return. So we're going to show that to you, and we're going to show you the evidence that does it. The Project Open Hand 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, published a study in Journal of Urban Health, a UCSF research study that looked at our intervention. And what that study showed is that because of our medical intervention, we're able to reduce hospitalizations by 63%. We're able to reduce emergency department visits by 58% and increase medication adherence by 50%. Those are powerful numbers. That makes real money for systems and for Medi-Cal, our version of Medicaid. So, second story, about 6 more minutes and I'll be done, I promise. Twee. Twee is one of those fierce breast cancer survivors. I can't remember her dog's name. Do you remember? No? Okay. She's got a fierce dog too. Twee is a young woman, right? You pass her on the street, you're not going to think that she suffered the way she suffered. But when she got breast cancer, it knocked her on her ass. And she came to us really in bad shape. She says she fought back, and she did, because we were able to engage, because we gave her hot meals to begin with. She got better. We gave her frozen meals. She could heat those up. We gave her groceries. She got even better. And now she volunteers sometimes. Now she teaches the other ladies how to do the work and be part of our system. So the so what of all this and the policy change that's critical in what we do is evident in California particularly. The 2 areas that are doing the best work in this are Boston and the Bay Area. We are similar in so many ways, academics, in culture, in other ways, and how progressive we are. So because of that research slide I showed you, and because we do really good work here, we were able to convince the state legislature, Assembly member Ting and Chu, and Senator McGuire and Skinner is over here, to support a statewide first-in-the-nation pilot that will provide medical nutrition to the highest utilizing Medi-Cal patients in the state in 8 counties, from San Diego to Sonoma, all urban counties, San Diego, LA, Santa Clara, San Mateo, San Francisco, Alameda, Sonoma, and Marin, where we will provide that secret sauce intervention that creates those reductions in utilization to the top utilizers in the Medi-Cal system to prove once and for all inside of a statewide system, a system that spends $34 billion a year on preventable readmissions. That's the problem we're solving. We'll prove that this intervention will reduce that into work and therefore free up dollars so we can spend on other things. And by the way, people get better and people get healthier. First time in the country this will happen. I hate that slide too. This is a continuum we talk about a lot in our work, where we find our place. So there are a lot of food providers, right? There are food banks and food pantries. There are Meals on Wheels programs. There are church soup kitchens. There's Glide and St. Anthony's, famous programs in San Francisco doing this work. There are agencies like ours, and agencies like Community Servings and Project Open Hand serve that top of the triangle. We don't need to be everywhere else. We are about the most acute intervention, addressing the most acute diagnosis, getting it done, and then getting people healthier so they can use a far less expensive program. We're not cheap, but we're not cheap because it works, right? We have a prescription that works, and once we get you better, we want you to go on to the less expensive systems. We live in that top triangle. That one we talked about. So the goal of our program is reduce emissions, reduce utilizations, increase health, improve people's way of getting on with their lives. And just an easy number for you to think about is for 1 year, Project Open Hand can provide you with all your nutrition for about $6,000. Every day, every single admission to emergency department, a day stay in a hospital in San Francisco or Oakland, granted they're high cost centers, costs an average of $50,000. It's pretty easy math, right? This is the place where math happens in business, so you should get that. All right, last story. Michael, whew, he's a piece of work. He lives in Oakland. Beautiful voice. He'll be a narrator on something. He's like that Morgan Freeman, right? He narrates everything. That's what Michael's like. Dancer as a young man, addicted to crack cocaine until 4 years ago, I think. Really terrible life. Made every bad decision you could make. That sounded like my grandmother talking. Made every decision you could make that wasn't the best for you. And survived, right? He's a survivor. And finally, we got him connected to us. And Michael is now is healthy and happy and goes to work and isn't addicted to crack cocaine anymore and is living with his HIV diagnosis in a really positive way and now goes to work and laughs with his friends and cooks. He loves to cook. He gets groceries from us. And he is the story of what we do. And look at those eyes, right? There's life in those eyes. That's what we know how to do in our work. Okay, I think that's my last slide. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Oh, volunteer. I'm always supposed to say this. You can volunteer, and you should volunteer. I know you don't have time. But you can volunteer in Oakland, or you can go across the bridge or under the bay and volunteer at San Francisco. You can deliver meals, you can chop celery, you can package meals, you can work at one of our senior sites. You can do anything you want to for us. You can do it once, or you can do it for the rest of your time here. 1 day is enough. Just take one time and volunteer with a food agency, and you'll see the difference you make. Okay? That's our work. Thank you very much.
Come sit here. Do that.
It's fun. Thank you.
Let's see. Come join me up here. Can you turn off the projector for just a little while we do the questions?
Where do you want to sit?
Here,
Where
Corby,
are
you
we?
sit there. I'll sit in the middle. How about that? I can direct traffic. Here's some water. If you like, would you like a glass of water? Thank you.
Thank you, Corby.
I was going to even propose for the volunteers, if you're open to it, there's quite a few students in the class who are very interested in this issue of food insecurity, particularly on campus, and I was wondering if you would, I think volunteering is a great start, but how about some internships or apprenticeships so we could learn from the masters about what would also work here on campus.
In a heartbeat.
Great. So, and also thanks for bringing some of your colleagues. We're going to wrap up tonight a little bit before 8, so maybe they'll come down and spend some time too with anyone that wants to talk. Every time I see a presentation like this, I just get I want to scratch my head and beyond about just the allocation of resource. When you show how much money, first of all, you're showing money that you're saving in a medical system that is set up to treat illness and disease. And we know now you're showing this medical nutrition that if you moved it upstream, you would prevent billions of dollars of medical care costs. But meanwhile, the public conversation is all about building walls, building more military might, but we're just, we're lacking sort of the cultural will to really focus on this kind of human vitality and flourishing. But we do have elections coming up. How do you translate kind of what you're doing into a bigger movement? How do we take the great progress you're making and kind of infuse it in the food movement in a way that's going to be catalytic?
Well, when has been a better time to decide I can make a difference in my own community? This is what resistance looks like. It is finding the way to engage and make a personal difference. And you know, I hear that. I'm married to, my spouse is in public health and established the first wellness and prevention fund that was written into a state in Massachusetts. So when you say there's like no money, the whole idea is to demonstrate programs like ours that can stop these billions of dollars in the future by training yourself as a community health worker, by coming and volunteering at Project Open Hand. Of course, if you get on a plane, community serving is very good at training volunteers. And we have great trainers who are drill sergeants. But I can't imagine a better time to say, I don't like what's going on nationally, I want to make a difference myself. And I'm expecting a wave of student activism.
I think that's, and I think that be proud of the fact that we are actually creating opportunity by saving money in this work. I don't think we have to be ashamed talking about the financial aspect of this, the return on that investment. It's powerful. And you know, we raise a lot of money. Between the two organizations, we raise a lot of private money. But projects like what's happening in Massachusetts and what is happening in the state of California will make sure that this service becomes a part of the integrated structure of healthcare. It's just so basic. And then all that money gets freed up for other things. So be proud of the return that we're causing.
And do everything you can to show that it's proving it for the future when national policy goes more in a direction we want. The reason I bragged about my spouse, as I love doing, is because there's lots of pockets of things that happen with the Affordable Care Act that are not gone yet. Right. And they still exist. And so the people, our friends in public health, may be in exile as far as having a position of national authority right now, right in federal agencies. But they know these levers that have been created and these pockets that have been created, well, like wellness and prevention funds, of SNAP assistance, which is, who knows what's going to happen this year. It's under constant threat, but it's there now. And so try to find places in your community that are using it or engaging with it now and build it out locally in places that federal policy can't touch.
We had a great class last year with Michelle Nishon from Wholesome Wave.
Bounty Bucks, started by Gus Schumacher, his co-founder, who sadly died this year.
Right.
But it started, where did it start? In Dorchester, Massachusetts. Everything began in Dorchester, at a farmer's market in Dorchester, Massachusetts, authorized by the mayor of Boston, Thomas Menino. A great program that they have taken nationally. Michelle's been such an engine of its national growth.
We have that class on video, too, in our archive if you're interested in referencing it. Who's got a question for our guests tonight? Come on down to the microphone, or there's one up here. And then Corby, we'll do a couple questions on this topic, and then you submitted some great questions related to the articles that we had you read that Corby wrote.
Annoyingly difficult and hard.
We'll save a lot of time for those annoyingly difficult questions. So, welcome.
Thank you both.
Can we have the mic on up here, please? Hold on one second. Okay, try it again.
Oh, okay. Thank you both for being here. So last week we had Revolution Foods, which is like a food startup. They've undergone multiple multi-million-dollar funding rounds. I recently was able to hear from a few VCs earlier this week that there's never been greater access to institutional capital. So I would love to hear your perspectives running nonprofits, if you feel that in your sector that's true, if there's sufficient capital for these amazing organizations, and if not, how can we, this was touched upon a little bit in the first discussion, but like how can like capital markets shift to, you know, induce more like capital?
I have a very quick answer. He's the guy who's the venture capitalist. So you were dealing with a very innovative for-profit business model developed with Will's help when you were talking Revolution Foods. So nonprofits typically don't have access to venture capital money because we're not promising an actual return on investment. So we don't have access to that money ourselves.
Right.
You're the banker. You're the former venture capitalist.
I think that can't happen with what we do, and I think there's a really good reason for that. Aside from what Corby said, which is just the fact, right? That they can't have ownership, so you can't have there will not be a public offering opportunity or a way to get that money back, right? It just won't happen. But we're supposed to be built in organically and out of the community. You know, we are here for that. We're not here to be funded by the firms down in Silicon Valley. We're here to be funded by the community to solve a problem in our community. And I think that keeps us in a really special place.
I think this model relates really well. If you remember our second class when Professor Claire Brown was here and she talked about Buddhist economics, is if we were to elevate the value of compassion. I mean, Mark's slide says food is love, food equals love. I think what's really interesting about these models is that they amplify that dimension, you know, of the economic relationship. And what you heard from both people is that there's a lot of reward. It's non-monetary, but this reward of participating in a volunteer, you know, capacity or just a community capacity has great value. So this really, to me, I think one of the challenges about being in the Bay Area is being in this blinding exposure of the amplification of venture capital having the answer to everything. Venture capital is basically based on a casino economy. You're basically betting that one of many things is going to work. This is much more, these programs need to show up every day. They need to be reliable. They can't depend on people that walk away when it's not working or growing as fast as they want it to. So, you know, I think that we still live in this kind of schizophrenia of capitalism where, as Corby mentioned, you know, you make it all here as a rich person and then you give it away over here. I think what we're really looking for is a much more integrated and blended view. And, you know, that's some of the kind of forms of entrepreneurship we're exploring here at Berkeley.
Don't let that stop you from being the next Kristen Gross Richmond. So
Right.
You will create a business that venture capitalists will want, venture capital will want to fund, that will feed your hungry students. You can go home and think of it tonight.
But just to build on that, Revolution Foods has reshaped the expectations of some of the investors in terms of the time frame that they're willing to participate. And really, solutions like this that relate to health and sustainability really require long-term capital commitment, which is one of the challenges in the nonprofit space, where you're moving year to year with financial commitments from funders, right?
And maybe that's why when we talked to Kristen about being the provider in a more expanded program with this statewide pilot, because it doesn't all need to be produced in San Francisco and LA. It needs to actually be produced by someone like Rev Foods in a more expanded structure, because there are a lot of people doing this work. We talk about how the groundwork gets laid by these nonprofits, right? Because of what Will says, our time horizon is just different. We have the luxury and the burden of having a 20-year solution, but because of the work we've done, that groundwork we've laid, part of what we've done is opened a door for Rev Foods or for Mom's Meals or for other innovative firms in this work. And they are a social movement. They're a funded social movement with an exit opportunity, but they're a social movement.
Well said. Who else has got a question?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. It seems like both of you gentlemen have very viable organizations that are geographically polar, and that's the only thing that's polar. And it seems that you're doing all of the right things, and so, but you do need funds to stay in business. Have you, either of you, thought about contacting perhaps a professional grant writer to kind of ease your funding. That would be perhaps an avenue, because there's a lot of specialists out there, and I'm not sure what database or which organization I could recommend. I don't have any recommendations, but perhaps consider a professional grant writer. And I know a lot of students have done that sort of thing, and if you can get that out of one of your volunteer students.
When we were in our teeny tiny Dorchester kitchen, one of the very first people we paid any actual money to was a grant writer. So from the very beginning, we've used grant writers.
Oh, good.
And then we brought it in-house. And David Waters is so imaginative about really looking under, I mean, not even rocks, like subway seats. He just finds these small hidden philanthropies and organizations. And as all of you know with grants, you constantly apply, you get turned down all the time.
I know.
But you have to constantly
Exactly.
apply. So yes, we've always had professionals.
Yeah,
Because that's it. If you get the right one, they would kind of know the various nuances of your particular
Also,
discourse.
grant writers write in their own code. Maybe Will teaches that code.
We have one of our grant writers is here, and she does a pretty amazing job doing
Okay,
that
well,
work.
good. I was just kind of wishing
Yeah.
more funds your way. Because,
I would like for more of that.
I understand what you were saying. I think it was this gentleman here. He said that the rich kind of don't like us, but sometimes we gotta also have a good PR person as well.
Thank you. You bet. Thank you. Who's somebody up here or over here? Okay, come up right here.
Okay, thank you for your sharing. I'm really appreciated for that. And I also love cooking, so I'm glad to hear there would be a great volunteer opportunity. Yeah, and I want to know that when you operate the project Open Hand, what's the biggest difficulty you have met and how you solve it?
Measuring success, I think, is the biggest difficulty, because it can feel sometimes like we're never going to solve this problem. And when the first 2 decades of my career were about finishing something, we're making tiny steps, and sometimes that's hard to walk out in the street and see yet another person who needs what you do. That's the hardest part for me.
Do either of you have a sense of the size of the unmet need? I mean, you're talking about 2,500 meals and 4,000 meals, but I would imagine the population of people across the country do you have a number?
Oh yeah, they estimate 46 million people who are food insecure in this country. 13 million Californians are on Medi-Cal. State spends $34 billion on preventable readmissions. The numbers are endless.
And we're between the two organizations, the two leading surviving organizations, we're under 10,000 a week. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So there's a lot of work to do.
And Monsanto is making us sicker in some ways. So I think we fight both sides. We are trying to help, and at the same time there are pressures coming at us from giant food companies. And I like Oreos, but they're not good for you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sarah, and I'm involved with the Basic Needs Security Community on campus. Just really quickly, this Saturday we're hosting a clinic for CalFresh, which is the California version of SNAP, to enroll the potentially 10,000 students who are eligible for up to $192 per month for food assistance. So it's this Saturday, 12:30 to 3:30. If you could tell your friends, that'd be really
say
great.
that again much slower.
Sorry. This Saturday, 12:30 to 4, SNAP.
Where?
Unit 3 APR.
Unit 3 APR.
And are you, each of you should help with this in some way. So can they help recruit students? And you should think about if you're eligible for it, because one of the great surprises to anybody who looks at SNAP is how many eligible people don't enroll. And that's something I've been trying to impress upon students. So this is going to be a way of coming and getting information about it, right? And how can any of these students help organize it, or do you have all the workers you need?
Yeah, we have a great team of volunteers both on campus and with the local food bank, and we just really want to get the word out to the potentially 10,000 eligible students who are EOP, work study, or Cal Grant eligible. But another project we're working on is actually with the Berkeley Student Food Collective, which I know some volunteers we have here, to basically stream all the food waste from the dining halls and transform them into edible meals for students. So I was kind of wondering how you guys and your programs have gone about utilizing the food waste and food recovery efforts to create a more closed-loop ecosystem.
We can't, and we don't. So what we get is a ton of food bank food that is, perfectly usable and fresh, but we can't do any of the recovered food because we have these incredibly high food safety standards and medically tailored meals requirements. So it's not part of our bailiwick.
Same answer. Clients are far too vulnerable to take any risk of that chance and there is a chance. Probably fine for me, but we can't take the risk for the rest. It's too bad.
Thank you, and good luck on Saturday, and keep up the good work.
But I have to say, yes. This is something that fascinates me. I did a column that I didn't show Will, I don't think, about food waste and how incredibly quickly it has seized the imagination of students. And food waste is it. And I teach at a school in Italy, Slow Foods, University of Gastronomic Sciences. I have the best students. I mean, they're fantastically committed, and they're from all over the world. And the food, I recently got Marion Nessel, who's probably come out
Last
here.
week, or 2 weeks ago.
All right, so Marion Nessel, I hope you all heard. She was scandalized by how bad the food was. Just infuriated. For this, I came to Italy to teach. But she was completely knocked out by the students. They're just great, the students. Food's terrible. Why? Because the food is all based around zero waste. You have to order it in advance. You basically are shunned if you don't eat everything. And they are really careful about their ordering and every scrap of food. And she said to them, you are willing to sacrifice good food in Italy for this food waste reduction? They all said, yep, it's our priority. And so it's taken hold. Mm-hmm. And I hope that you'll also think about hunger the way you're thinking about food waste. But food waste is a great thing to be worried about. I'm just surprised.
Thank you. Another question here.
Hi, my name is Leah. I'm a first-year student in the Master of Public Health Nutrition program. And side note, I just want to say I fully support the motion to have student interns from Berkeley. Just putting that out there. And my question is, I'm curious about how nutrition education plays out. As you mentioned a little bit, to your beneficiaries and clients, how does that relationship between educator and client work?
I have a big answer to that, so I'm going to let Mark.
Okay, I'll go quick. It is the linchpin of the engagement. They being able to understand what the nutritional challenges are of the client, and then to sit with each client and help them understand how to navigate their system and how they comprehend and what culturally is appropriate and what works with their diagnosis is the linchpin of our work. And so, which is why we have 5 full-time dietitians doing this work with clients. It's very, very important.
So again, with our employee model, I don't know how many we have now, but the first really important person we had was an intake coordinator. She was an African-American woman who had gotten over drug addiction. And boy, was she tough, and boy, was she empathetic and fabulous. But the next hire was a nutrition educator. Because the whole idea was, if you're not telling people how to eat so that they will feel better and be healthier, what's the point of giving them these wonderful, beautiful meals if when their families don't have this meal or they can't educate the rest of their families, they can't feed themselves? It's absolutely key, just as Mark says. So we've always found that very important. And we've always tried to get grants for it. It's been hard to get grants for nutrition education, but it's been part of what we've found essential from the beginning.
So, Corby, one of the things that we do every week is we read the readings suggested by the guests. You had some fabulous readings. We ask the students to submit a question, and then we compile the questions, and the teaching team picks some out. I don't usually give the guests the courtesy of handing them.
Why am I so lucky?
Because there were such great questions. So here's the instruction. You pick one at your discretion that you want to answer, and just you can read the question and then also mention the student's name if you don't mind.
Of course not. I believe in bylines. I give credit for everything. Whenever I steal somebody's line, I credit it. All writers steal. So I'll go through some of these fast so I can be quick and epigrammatic and superficial, because a lot of them require deep thought. They're really good questions, and I don't have deeply thought on answers, but they bring up important issues that were under a lot of what I was writing, so I'm very impressed by them. So, would Blue Aprons and other meal kits company services be beneficial for communities who are food insecure? How can Blue Apron and meal kit companies change their services to assist developing countries who are experiencing food insecurity? Katie Hinn. I hope Katie Hinn is here tonight. But
we'll find out. We're going to do the attendance in 5 minutes. So
go and congratulate Katie Hinn. So this would imagine that somebody was going to send free meal kits to people with good educational instructions in them, and then try to follow up with a video or something live. So in theory, yes, it could be very beneficial, but it's never going to work because of the expense of shipping and packing. And one of the most immoral and horrible and instantly ridiculed suggestions of the current administration was America's Harvest Box. This horrible idea in which the Secretary of the USDA said, it's going to be just like Blue Apron. We'll give people lousy, dry, surplus food that nobody wants, and they don't want either, every month, but we'll call it Healthy at America's Harvest Box. And it was going to be up to all of the states to figure out who was going to pay the shipping or who was going to pay to educate them. But if you don't have somebody who's willing to open the box and be educated and have an idea of what it is, the shipping is just too expensive to do. In theory, if everybody had $1 zillion to ship these things, it would be fine. But no, it's not going to happen. What are my views on the fast pace of American dining in comparison to some other countries that spend much more time on eating meals and slow foods? Tiffany Chang. Well, Alice and I are united in our love of slow food. I wrote the first book about it in English. I love slow food, but this is a question of community and the importance that a group and a family places on coming together and being at a meal. It is not the importance of the food itself. It is, do we consider this a time for meaningful social interchange, much more than the food? So I think American dining is too broad a generalization. There's 1,000 different kinds of Americans and the way they dine. So, and I don't know that other countries are spending that much time, and I do know that American business and fast food is taking a wrecking ball to other countries that are embracing this kind of convenience, especially in Asia. So, that's bad, but cling to your ethnic groups. And African Americans coming together over food is one of the most beautiful things and subject of many new books in the past year. So that's great. Is the tyranny of top chefs in any way a function of the peer pressure of industry trends? Can I discuss in further detail the history of this train of thought and chef-prescribed experience-oriented strategy? Alexander Park. So the tyranny of top chefs in television is viewing cooking as some kind of competition and battle to the death, as opposed to a way of bringing together your family over food. It's very easy for us to ridicule these food shows, and we do. But it also means that a lot of 7 to 10-year-old boys come up to chefs I know who've been on television and say they want to learn how to cook, and they do cook. And so exposing young people to food, especially boys who might otherwise look only at sports, because it is being presented as another kind of competition and another kind of sports show. Rick Bayless is wonderfully on record as saying You know, his brother is one of the most famous football commentators in the country, Skip Bayless, on television. He's an NFL commentator. Nobody in his family took Rick seriously, one of the most decorated and famous chefs in the country, until he was on Top Chef. He was finally winning an athletic competition. So there's some good things that come of it. Molecular gastronomy. Does this focus more on the chef's talents and the diner's comfort? Yes, it does. But how can we do that without sacrificing the level of innovation that many restaurants currently pursue? So there's this built-in tension between chefs who want to be artistic and innovative and creative, and then people who, as Ru Chen Huang, somebody help me pronounce that name, very carefully delineated between tasting menus and artistic fulfillment and people getting to order what they want. I'll say that, have you had Daniel Patterson, who's one of the most interesting culinary figures in this country?
Not in the last couple of years.
He's right here, but he's a tormented, fascinating guy who's right here. He tried to start local LOCOL. Have any of you been to that one in Oakland? It's still open, isn't it?
No.
That one failed, and the one in Los Angeles is still open? He's just fascinating and tormented, but he's somebody who does tasting menus and still adheres to that idea of tasting menus. But it's always, but one of the few in the Bay Area. It's not that popular here, but it's always a tension between letting people order what they want and showing off your artistic talents as a chef, and it's not a solved tension.
We had Dan Barber here earlier in the year, and he talked about that, but his challenge is he takes everything off the farm and is turning it into.
Can I say, and Dan's one of my closest friends, and I'm about to appear on stage with him, and I forced him to come. That's his story. So his story is, and he has a wonderful, this isn't being recorded.
He's watching tonight.
It isn't being recorded.
He tunes in every night now.
His beautiful line is, the farmer leads the dance. I only do what the farmers and the produce are telling me to do. And it is a very good line, but it's also the fact that he gets to tell people what to eat. And he gets to make what sings to him in what is there in the farm. Now, he does it in incredibly ingenious ways, but he has his cake and eats it too, even though I don't think Dan eats cake.
One more.
Okay, one more. It's similar. How does, well, two that I'll do really quickly. Can Blue Apron utilize its reach to alleviate food system problems such as food deserts and lack of access to nutritious foods? All of you can take a combination of Kristen Gruss Richmond's Revolution Foods, bringing mass-produced commissary-produced meals to underserved populations by doing it economically on large scale. The way Blue Apron has tried to do this and is failing because it's not able to solve mailing costs, but try to do it in a way that could ship large boxes to a community center and introduce other kinds of food to them. There's a way that this circle can be squared, and nobody's thought of it. You're the next generation. Think of using Blue Apron's enormous reach in being able to prepare these foods and pack them up, along with food deserts. How can it be made scalable? How can it be made economical with cheap foods? And then that was Sarah Tsai. And then how does the idea that having too many choices and labels with the How Good app, which rates different foods on how they're raised, how the labor is in stores, how can it interact with human psychology and consumer behavior? Is it too many choices? No, it narrows the choice with a 3-star system that in a sort of cowardly way said, good, even better, great, because stores wouldn't let them put in bad, don't eat this, not good for you. All sorts of psychology, and you are probably much more versed in psychology than I am, but the studies that I've always seen made reference to say that the fewer the choices, the happier the consumer. If you show them that there's just a few things they have to pick from, they're less anxious, and they're more able to make a confident decision. So I think that How Good is a way of focusing people and helping them use their dollars better.
Let's have a big hand for Mark and Corby. Very inspiring.
Thank you all.
If you could turn the projector back on, we will get your eye clicker out and ask you a key question.
An eye clicker. What's an eye clicker?
An eye clicker is this magical electronic device that tells us if somebody is here. And what we do each night is we're going to do a question based on that. How often do you use an app to make a food choice decision?
Okay. So
never, once a week, 2 to 5 times a week, more than 5 times a week. And then we'll show you the answer, Corby.
I think I'm going to expire if I don't eat one of these.
That is
right
interesting.
away.
That's very interesting. And can you flip me back now?